Nikola Tesla's wireless energy transmission. In 1901, on Long Island, New York, Nikola Tesla began constructing something that would change civilization forever, a 187-foot tower called Wardenclyffe. Its purpose? To transmit electricity wirelessly across the entire globe. For free. No power lines, no meters, no bills. Just unlimited energy pulled from the atmosphere itself. Tesla had already lit the 1893 World's Fair wirelessly. He'd proven the concept. Now he was scaling it up. The tower rose into the sky, its massive dome crackling with energy during tests. Witnesses reported light bulbs glowing in their hands miles away from the tower. The technology worked. But there was one man who didn't like what he was seeing. J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in America, who had initially funded the project. When he realized what Tesla was actually building, he asked the question that would kill the dream. If anyone can draw energy from the air, where do we put the meter? Morgan pulled the funding in 1906. Construction stopped immediately. Tesla scrambled for new investors, but Morgan made sure every door was closed. The tower stood incomplete, a monument to what could have been. By 1917, it was demolished for scrap metal. Tesla spent his final years in poverty, feeding pigeons in New York City parks, his greatest invention reduced to rubble. When he died alone in a hotel room in 1943, the FBI arrived within hours. They seized 80 trunks full of his research, documents, and plans. The official reason? National security. Those documents remain classified to this day. The FBI claims most were released to his family, but researchers who've tried to access the full archive hit walls of redaction. What was in those papers that required 8 decades of secrecy? The wireless energy technology that could have freed humanity from the grid was buried because it couldn't be controlled, metered, or monopolized. Tesla's crime wasn't that his invention didn't work, it was that it worked too well. Royal Rife's frequency cancer cure. In the 1920s, Royal Raymond Rife built something the medical establishment claimed was impossible, a microscope powerful enough to see living viruses and a frequency generator that could destroy them, not with chemicals, not with radiation, with sound. Rife's theory was simple but revolutionary. Every organism has a resonant frequency. Hit it with that exact frequency and it vibrates itself to death, while healthy cells remain untouched. Like an opera singer shattering a wine glass, but on a cellular level. In 1934, the University of Southern California sponsored a clinical trial. 16 patients with terminal cancer were treated with Rife's frequency device. The results were documented by 5 medical doctors. After 90 days, 14 patients were completely cured. The remaining 2 were cured after another month of treatment. 16 out of 16, a 100% cure rate for terminal cancer. The medical committee celebrated. Newspaper headlines announced the breakthrough. A banquet was held in Rife's honor. For a brief moment, the world had a cure for cancer that cost almost nothing and harmed no one. Then the silence began. Articles disappeared from archives. Doctors who'd witnessed the trials refused to speak about them. Rife's lab was mysteriously broken into multiple times. Nothing was stolen, but equipment was destroyed. His microscopes, which had taken years to build, were smashed. In 1939, his lab burned to the ground. The pharmaceutical industry, which was built on expensive treatments and patented drugs, had too much to lose. Doctors who continued to use Rife's machines had their licenses threatened. His business partner was bought out and the manufacturing plant dismantled. His supporters were harassed into silence. Rife, once celebrated in medical journals, became a non-person. He spent his final years battling alcoholism and depression, watching his life's work be systematically erased. He died in 1971, broken and forgotten. Today, his name appears in no medical textbooks. His machines exist only in private collections. The clinical trial that cured 16 dying patients has been scrubbed from official records. The question remains, if the technology didn't work, why work so hard to destroy every trace of it? Stanley Meyer's water-powered car. In the 1980s, an inventor from Ohio named Stanley Meyer claimed he'd solved the energy crisis. His dune buggy ran on water, not hydrogen fuel cells that required industrial processing, just ordinary tap water, split on demand through a process he called electrolysis enhancement. No gasoline, no oil, just H2O. The scientific community laughed. It violated thermodynamics, they said. It was perpetual motion nonsense. Then Mayer drove his buggy from coast to coast, on camera for television news crews, from Ohio to California on 22 gallons of water. He demonstrated the technology at scientific conferences. He was granted patents, which meant the U.S. Patent Office had verified his claims through independent testing. The car ran. The technology worked. The implications were civilization-changing. International interest exploded. Arab investors offered Mayer $1 billion to suppress the technology. He refused. "This belongs to humanity," he reportedly told them. Major automotive corporations approached them. He refused them too. He wanted the technology released worldwide, freely licensed, so anyone could build it. On March 21, 1998, Stanley Meyer met with two Belgian investors at a restaurant in Growth City, Ohio. They were negotiating a deal to fund international production. During the meeting, Meyer grabbed his neck, ran outside, and collapsed in the parking lot. His brother Stephen was there. He reported Stanley's final words, "They poisoned me." Stanley Meyer died minutes later. He was 57 years old. The coroner ruled it a cerebral aneurysm, natural causes. The investors disappeared. The technology vanished. Meyer's patents were tied up in legal battles. His car sits in a private collection. His water fuel cells were dismantled and studied, but the exact specifications died with him. His brother still maintains Stanley was murdered. The Grove City police found no evidence of foul play, but they also found no medical history of aneurysm risk. A healthy man in his 50s, moments from securing international funding, drops dead claiming he was poisoned, and we're told it's just coincidence? The technology that could have ended oil dependency died with Stanley Meyer in that parking lot, and officially, absolutely nothing suspicious happened. Wilhelm Reich's orgone accumulator. In the 1940s, Austrian-American psychiatrist Wilhelm Reich claimed to have discovered something that mainstream science insisted didn't exist, a universal life energy he called orgone, and he built a box to accumulate it. The orgone accumulator was deceptively simple, layers of organic material alternating with metallic material, creating a cabinet you could sit inside. Reich claimed it concentrated orgone energy, which could heal diseases, including cancer. He documented thousands of cases of improvement in his patients. He published research. He built weather devices he claimed could make it rain using orgone principles. The scientific establishment dismissed him as a quack, but Reich had credentials. He'd been a student of Freud, a respected psychoanalyst, a serious researcher. His early work on character analysis was groundbreaking. Then he went too far. He claimed to have found the fundamental force of life itself, and more dangerously, he gave it away. He published exact plans so anyone could build an accumulator. No patents, no profits. In March 1954, the FDA filed a complaint for an injunction, not based on testing the device. They refused to examine it. The injunction stated that orgone energy did not exist, therefore the accumulators were fraudulent. Reich refused to appear in court, arguing that a scientific matter couldn't be decided by legal proceedings. He was right, but it didn't matter. The court ruled against him. They ordered all orgone accumulators destroyed, and all publications mentioning orgone energy banned. When Reich continued his research, he was charged with contempt. In August 1956, agents arrived at his laboratory. They dismantled his equipment with axes. They loaded his books and journals into a truck. Then they burned them. 6 tons of Wilhelm Reich's publications were incinerated by order of a federal court. This is the only case in American history where a federal court ordered the burning of a scientist's research, not in Nazi Germany, in America, in 1956. Reich was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison. He died there in November 1957, 1 week before his parole hearing. The official cause was heart failure. He was 60 years old. His crime was building a box and publishing information. His punishment was the complete destruction of his life's work and dying in a cage. Whether orgone energy exists or not, the response tells you everything about what happens when someone threatens the medical establishment's control over healing. Eugene Mallove's cold fusion research. In March 1989, chemists Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann announced something that shook the scientific world: cold fusion. Nuclear fusion at room temperature, producing excess energy with no radiation. If real, it meant unlimited clean power in a device the size of a desktop. Energy independence, an end to oil, everything. The hot fusion establishment, which had consumed billions in funding for massive tokamak reactors, immediately attacked. The most aggressive criticism came from MIT. Their scientists couldn't replicate the results. Cold fusion was declared dead. The entire field became scientific blasphemy overnight. But one MIT scientist wasn't satisfied with his institution's conclusions. Dr. Eugene Mallove had been MIT's cold fusion researcher and science writer. When he examined the raw data from MIT's attempted replication, he found something disturbing. The data had been altered. The experiment had actually produced excess heat, confirming Pons and Fleischmann's claims. But in the published paper, that data was manipulated to show no effect. MIT had deliberately falsified results to discredit cold fusion. Mallove confronted his superiors. They refused to acknowledge the fraud. In 1991, he resigned in protest and spent the next 13 years crusading for cold fusion research. He founded Infinite Energy magazine, published evidence from hundreds of successful replications worldwide, and repeatedly called out MIT's corruption. The phenomenon was real. Researchers in Japan, Italy, and the United States were consistently producing excess heat through low-energy nuclear reactions. But Western institutions and mainstream journals blacklisted the topic. Funding dried up. Careers were destroyed. Cold fusion became a joke, despite mounting evidence. Mallove wouldn't let it die. He was writing a book exposing the MIT cover-up. He was securing funding for new research. He was becoming impossible to ignore. Then, on May 14, 2004, Eugene Mallove drove to a rental property he owned in Norwich, Connecticut to clean it between tenants. He never came home. His body was found the next morning, beaten to death in the driveway. He was 56 years old. Police arrested 2 men for the murder. Both had criminal records. The official story? A random robbery. They needed money for drugs, saw someone at the property, and attacked. But nothing was stolen. Mallove's wallet and car were untouched. The killers had no explanation for why they were there or what the motive was. They were convicted, but the question lingers. Why would 2 addicts beat a man to death and take nothing? Why that property? Why that day? Why the man who was weeks away from publishing evidence that MIT had committed scientific fraud to bury a technology that could end energy scarcity? Cold fusion research continues quietly in private labs and foreign universities. The excess heat is real. The effect is reproducible. But in mainstream science, it remains forbidden. And the man who wouldn't stop fighting to expose the cover-up died violently in his driveway. Officially, for no reason at all. Thomas Townsend Brown's anti-gravity device. In the 1920s, while still a teenager, Thomas Townsend Brown discovered something that shouldn't exist according to conventional physics. When he applied high voltage to a capacitor, it moved. Not from any conventional force. It moved in the direction of the positive pole, as if gravity itself was being manipulated. He called it the Biefeld-Brown effect, electrogravitic propulsion. Brown spent the next 40 years developing the technology. By the 1950s, he was demonstrating disc-shaped craft that flew using only electrical charge. No propellers, no jets, no moving parts, just high voltage creating thrust, seemingly by warping local gravitational fields. In 1952, Brown demonstrated his flying discs for the military. They flew in a controlled circle, tethered but airborne, powered only by electricity. Navy researchers were present. The demonstrations were filmed. The technology was witnessed by dozens of scientists and military personnel. Then, everything went silent. Brown was brought into classified military projects. His research continued, but now under black budget programs. He traveled to France, where he demonstrated more advanced prototypes for the military there. Reports suggest they flew at speeds and performed maneuvers impossible with conventional technology. The French military was impressed. Then, that program too disappeared behind classification. Brown received patents for his devices, but they describe the technology in careful terms that avoid the obvious implications. The patents exist, the physics papers exist, the witness testimonies exist, but the working technology vanished into military secrecy. Brown spent his later years trying to revive public interest. He gave lectures, published papers, demonstrated smaller-scale effects that anyone could replicate. The Biefeld-Brown effect is real. You can build a simple version in your garage. High voltage applied to an asymmetric capacitor produces thrust. It's reproducible. But the explanation remains controversial, and the advanced applications remain classified. Thomas Townsend Brown died in 1985, largely unknown outside niche scientific circles. His name appears in no physics textbooks. His revolutionary propulsion system is absent from aerospace engineering curricula. The flying discs he demonstrated for the military in the 1950s have never been officially acknowledged. But pilots still report UFOs performing impossible maneuvers, craft that hover silently, accelerate instantly, and defy gravity. Craft that match exactly what Brown demonstrated 70 years ago, before his technology was classified and buried. The official story is that electrogravitic propulsion doesn't work, or only produces trivial thrust from ion wind. But if that's true, why classify it? Why hide 70 years of research? Why let the inventor die in obscurity while his technology disappears into black programs? Brown proved that gravity could be manipulated with electricity. Then the military made sure you'd never hear about it. And the technology that could have revolutionized transportation remains locked away, if it exists at all, officially. 6 inventors, 6 revolutionary technologies, 6 suspiciously similar endings. Each one threatened a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Each one was destroyed, suppressed, or classified. Each inventor died broke, in prison, or under suspicious circumstances. The official explanations always sound reasonable in isolation, but when you see the pattern, you start asking different questions. What if these technologies actually worked? What if the suppression wasn't about protecting people from snake oil, but about protecting industries from disruption? What if the real danger wasn't to public safety, but to the power structures built on scarcity? We live in a world where energy is controlled, medicine is expensive, and transportation burns fossil fuels. Not because that's the only way it could be, but because that's the way it's profitable. These inventors offered alternatives. They were eliminated. The technologies might be gone, but the questions remain. How many other breakthroughs have been buried? How many other inventors have been silenced? And what could our world look like if innovation was allowed to flourish, instead of being crushed by the institutions that profit from keeping things exactly as they are? Think about that the next time you pay your electric bill, fill your gas tank, or wonder why we still don't have the future we were promised.